I turned 60 on a Tuesday. I expected nothing big, maybe a quiet dinner, a card from my kids. Instead, I woke to a silent house. No balloons, no coffee smell, no happy birthday, Dad. Just quiet. Out of habit, I checked my phone. The first thing I saw was my daughter's post. A picture of my wife, my 2 kids, and even my sister on the deck of a massive cruise ship. They were laughing, sunglasses on, ocean behind them. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever." There was no tag for me, no mention of me, not even a "wish you were here." I stared at the photo for a long time, my hands cold, my coffee untouched. I thought about the boardrooms I'd spent birthdays in, the late nights at the office, the vacations I'd missed because next year will be different. I'd built a career that paid for everything they were enjoying in that picture. And yet, I wasn't part of it. That was the moment I realized something brutal. I had been building a life for them, but somewhere along the way, I'd stopped living it with them. I didn't know it yet. But what happened after that morning would force me to decide, keep holding on to the success I had built, or risk it all to win back the family I thought I'd never lose. I was never supposed to be here. I mean, here, in the sense of a man with a 6-figure salary, a house overlooking the bay, and a name that actually meant something in the financial district. I was born in a small town where people worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. My father was a mechanic, my mother a school secretary. College wasn't a given. It was a gamble. But I worked my way through, taking shifts at a diner and sleeping 4 hours a night, because I was certain one thing could save me: success. When I met Linda during my last year at university, she saw the ambition before I even knew how to put it into words. She believed in me when I had nothing to show. We got married 2 years later, and I promised her that I would give her a life where she'd never have to worry about bills, where our kids would never feel the small, stifling fear I grew up with. At first, it was a dream we shared. My first job at a small financial advisory firm didn't pay much, but every bonus, every promotion, felt like a victory for both of us. Linda celebrated every step. The kids, Emma and Jacob, were proud of their dad, even when they were too young to understand what my job really was. In those early years, we took family trips. I coached Jacob's Little League team one summer. We had pancake Sundays. But then the promotions started coming faster. The meetings got longer. The clients got bigger, and so did the stakes. A new house, better schools for the kids, a cabin by the lake. Each milestone made me feel like I was delivering on that promise I made to Linda. Every time I missed a dinner or a recital, I told myself, this is temporary. This is for them. And Linda never complained. She'd smile when I came home late, leave my dinner warming in the oven, and tell me she was proud of me. That's why I didn't see the first cracks. The travel started to pile up. New York, Chicago, San Francisco, sometimes 3 cities in 1 week. My assistant started blocking out entire weekends for client development. I told myself I was lucky. Linda didn't pressure me. The kids seemed fine. They still hugged me when I got home. But there were moments I didn't pay attention to. Emma stopped asking me to help her with her school projects. Jacob stopped inviting me to his games. Linda started going to events without checking if I could make it. I told myself they were just adjusting. I was building something for all of us, and this was the price. Then came the 30th wedding anniversary. I was in Boston that week, deep in negotiations with a corporate client who could change the trajectory of my entire firm. Linda knew I was busy. She hadn't mentioned any plans. On the morning of our anniversary, I sent flowers to the house and a diamond bracelet to her office. I got a quick "thank you, love you" text in return. That night, while reviewing documents in my hotel room, I opened my phone and saw a notification from Emma. It was a photo: Linda, Emma, and Jacob sitting at a long table in a private dining room, surrounded by family and friends. There were champagne glasses, a cake that said "Happy 30th," and a smiling toast frozen in time. I wasn't there. At first, I thought it was a surprise they were planning for when I got back. But then I saw the timestamp. The party was happening that night, without me. I stared at the photo, my fingers numb. Linda hadn't told me there was a celebration. No one had called, not even my sister. I checked my calendar, my messages, nothing. It wasn't a mistake. They had planned it, knowing I wouldn't be there. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they didn't want me to feel guilty. Maybe they knew I couldn't get away. But that night, alone in my hotel room, I felt the first real pang of something I couldn't name. When I got home a few days later, Linda greeted me with the same warm smile. The kids were polite and everything felt normal. Too normal. No one mentioned the party. No one seemed to think it was strange that I wasn't there. And that's when I realized something unsettling. My absence had stopped being unusual. It had become expected. I told myself it was fine. In a few years, I'd retire. I'd have all the time in the world to make up for the birthdays, the games, the anniversaries. I was still the provider, the protector, the one making sure they'd never have to worry. But as I looked around the dinner table that Sunday, listening to the conversation flow easily between Linda and the kids, about people I didn't know, events I hadn't been at, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel before. I wasn't part of their world anymore. I was just visiting. I used to believe my presence was essential. That belief began to crumble quietly, like the slow erosion of stone. So subtle you don't notice until a piece breaks off in your hand. The truth is, the house ran just fine without me. At first, it was little things. I'd come home from a trip to find that Linda had repainted the living room without mentioning it. Or I'd noticed the yard looking immaculate. But the landscaper had been hired and paid without my involvement. Emma was planning college visits with her mother. Jacob had joined a soccer league, and I found out only when I saw a jersey hanging in the laundry room. It wasn't that they were hiding things. It was that I wasn't part of the conversations anymore. Linda was different, too. She'd been independent since the day I met her, but now it felt like independence was her default mode, not a temporary adjustment. She didn't wait for me to weigh in on family decisions. She made them, executed them, and moved on. She was managing her own schedule, her own finances, even social plans without me. One evening, a Friday, I came home earlier than usual. The house smelled of roast chicken, laughter spilling from the kitchen. For a second, I thought maybe they'd been waiting for me. I stepped into the hallway and heard Linda's voice, light and animated, talking to her best friend over the phone. "It's just easier this way," she was saying. "Honestly, it doesn't matter if he's here or not. Nothing really changes." I froze. Her words weren't cruel. There was no malice. But they landed harder than any angry accusation could have. It wasn't that she didn't want me around. It was that she had stopped expecting me to be part of her life. I stepped into the kitchen a moment later, wearing the same polite smile I always wore, acting as if I hadn't heard a thing. She greeted me with warmth, offered me a plate. But all through dinner, her words echoed in my mind. "It doesn't matter if he's here or not." That night, Lying in bed next to her, I stared at the ceiling, realizing for the first time that maybe my absence wasn't just something they tolerated, it had become part of the family's design. The next week, I decided to make an effort. If I had somehow drifted to the outer circle of my own family, maybe I could swim back in. Jacob had a big soccer game coming up, regional semifinals. I cleared my schedule, bought the best seats, and even ordered a team sweatshirt with his number on it. I didn't tell him. I wanted it to be a surprise. The day of the game, I left work early, drove straight to the stadium, and pulled into the parking lot humming with anticipation. But when I walked toward the field, I didn't see our family section. I called Jacob. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, buddy, where are you?" "I'm here for the game." There was a pause. "Oh, the game was moved to an earlier time. We went with Coach and some friends. I didn't think you'd make it." I stood there, holding my sweatshirt, staring at the rows of empty bleachers. "So, no game now?" "No, Dad. It's over. We won, though." His voice brightened. "I'll send you a video later." I mumbled something about being proud of him and hung up, my chest tight. A week later, I tried again, this time with Emma. She'd been talking about a new restaurant in town for months. I booked a table for 4, thinking it might be a nice family dinner. I sent out a group text. "Dinner at 7, my treat. Let's make it a family night." Hours went by before Emma replied. "Thanks, Dad, but I'm going with friends tonight." "Rain check?" Linda added. "We're at your sister's for the evening, maybe next weekend." I stared at the screen, feeling foolish. I'd thought I was extending an invitation to my family, but it felt more like I was trying to insert myself into someone else's plans. That night, I sat at the kitchen table alone. The reservation I'd made going to waste. For years, I told myself that I was working for them. Every sacrifice, every late night, every canceled trip was a down payment on their happiness. But as I scrolled through my phone, seeing photos of Emma smiling with her friends, Jacob in a team picture surrounded by his teammates, Linda laughing with her sister, I realized something sobering. They were happy. They just didn't need me there to be. And for the first time, I wondered if they even wanted me there at all. I turned 60 on a Tuesday. Birthdays had never been a big deal for me, not since I was a kid. But 60 felt different. It was a milestone, a line in the sand. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I imagined maybe Linda would plan something small. Dinner, maybe. A cake. Instead, I woke to silence. The house was empty. No sound of coffee brewing, no footsteps, no murmurs of a conversation in the kitchen. Just the ticking of the clock on the wall. I checked my phone. No happy birthday texts from my wife. No calls from the kids. Not even an email from a colleague. I tried to tell myself it was early. People were busy. Maybe there was something planned for later. But habit had me opening Facebook. The first thing that popped up was a photo. Linda, Emma, and Jacob standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship. They were all wearing sunglasses, holding tropical drinks, the ocean stretching out behind them. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever." There was no mention of me. No tag. Not even a "wish you were here." I stared at the photo until the edges blurred. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I scrolled through their profiles, each post another punch to the gut. Emma smiling in front of a buffet table, Jacob posing at the ship's bow, Linda leaning on the railing with the sunset at her back. They looked happy, radiantly happy. And I wasn't even a footnote in that happiness. No one had called. No one had texted. My 60th birthday was just another day. I spent the rest of the morning in a haze. I walked through the house aimlessly, the quiet pressing in on me. In the kitchen, the calendar still hung on the wall. The date was circled in red. Dad's birthday, written in Linda's handwriting. A small detail that somehow made it worse. This wasn't a mistake. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen to celebrate without me. By noon, I stopped checking my phone. I didn't want to see any more pictures. I didn't want to see my life unfolding somewhere else, without me in it. I told myself I wouldn't call them. I wouldn't ruin their vacation with questions or accusations. I'd let them enjoy their trip. But the silence was unbearable. Late that night, scrolling absent-mindedly, I opened Messenger. I wasn't looking for anything, but a notification popped up, an unread message in Emma's conversation with a friend. She must have left her account logged in on the family laptop. It had synced to my phone. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped it open. The message was short, just one line. "This cruise is the perfect way for Mom to get a break from Dad for a few days." My chest tightened. A break from me. Not just a missed invitation, not just an oversight. This trip was deliberate. I read the message again and again, hoping I was misinterpreting it. But there was no ambiguity. The words were clear. Linda hadn't planned this cruise in spite of me. She'd planned it without me. I sat in the dark living room, my phone on the coffee table, the glow of the streetlights spilling through the blinds. I thought about the last 30 years, the missed anniversaries, the late nights, or the trips I didn't take. I thought about the time Jacob asked me to watch his championship game, and I promised I'd make the next one. The next one never came. I thought about the dinners Linda ate alone while I was in some hotel room across the country, congratulating myself for providing. And now here I was, 60 years old, sitting in an empty house, while my family toasted on the deck of a ship. A strange calm settled over me. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It wasn't even shock anymore. It was the realization that the life I thought I was living wasn't the life they were living with me. For them, this trip wasn't just a vacation. It was freedom. Freedom from the man who'd built a life for them, but had somehow built it in a way that left him standing on the outside. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't drink. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there, in the house I'd bought, surrounded by the furniture I'd chosen, looking at the walls that had heard all my late-night calls, my endless pitches, my deals. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't proud of any of it. The next morning, the phone finally buzzed. A text from Emma. "Happy birthday, Dad." No call, no apology, just a text. Jacob sent a thumbs-up emoji an hour later. Linda didn't text at all. I put the phone down and went to the window. Outside, the bay sparkled in the morning light. I'd always thought this house was my greatest achievement, the crown jewel of my career. But in that moment, it just felt like a monument to everything I'd done wrong. That was the moment I knew something had to change. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know if it was even possible. But I knew I couldn't sit here year after year, watching my family sail away without me, whether on a cruise ship or just in life. I had spent decades climbing to the top. Now I was standing there alone, and the view wasn't worth it. The morning after my 60th birthday, I sat at my desk, staring at the stack of files that represented the next 3 months of my life. A promotion was on the horizon. Senior partner. It was everything I'd worked for. The kind of title that put you in the history of the firm. But the thought of it made my stomach turn. What good was the title if there was no one left who cared? That afternoon, I asked my assistant to clear my schedule. By evening, I was in my managing partner's office, my resignation letter in hand. "You're kidding me," he said, looking up from the letter like it was a bad joke. "You're up for senior partner. Do you understand the size of the bonus you're walking away from?" "I do," I said quietly. "But there are some things I can't buy back." He stared at me for a long moment, then leaned back. "This isn't like you, Mark. Is everything okay at home?" I thought of Linda, of Emma and Jacob on that cruise ship. "That's exactly the problem," I said. "When I got home, I expected some kind of shift. I thought Linda might be surprised, maybe even relieved. Instead, her reaction was cautious. "You retired?" she asked, setting down the laundry basket. "I stepped down," I corrected. "I want to focus on us, on the family." Her eyes softened for a second, then narrowed slightly. "Is this because of the cruise?" "It's because I've missed too much," I said. She didn't respond right away. "I just don't want this to be about guilt," she said finally. "I don't want you to feel like you have to prove something." I tried to smile. "Maybe I do. Maybe that's exactly what I need to do." The kids' reactions weren't much better. Emma looked at me across the kitchen table, her arms folded. "You've been gone for most of my life, Dad. You can't just quit work and think that makes it better." "I don't expect it to," I said. "I just want the chance to try." Jacob was quieter. "We've heard this before," he said. "Every time you promised to be at a game or at dinner, it never happened." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not promising anything. I'm just showing up." It wasn't the warm welcome I had imagined, but I told myself it didn't matter. Change wasn't about a single conversation. It was about consistency. The next few weeks, I made myself present. I cooked breakfast. I asked about their days. I attended Jacob's soccer games, even if he barely acknowledged me from the field. I texted Emma just to ask how work was going. Linda seemed almost uncomfortable at first, like she was waiting for me to get a phone call and disappear again. When none came, she simply adjusted. But it wasn't affection. Not yet. One afternoon, while cleaning the garage, I came across a file folder on a shelf. It was labeled in Linda's handwriting. Out of habit, I flipped it open. Inside were listings for houses, smaller properties across town, closer to where Emma lived. I stared at the pages, my pulse tightening. That night at dinner, I tried to keep my tone light. "So, I saw the listings in the garage. Thinking about moving?" Linda set down her fork. "I was just exploring options. This house is big, Mark. It's expensive to maintain. And honestly, it hasn't felt like home in a long time." The words hit harder than she probably intended. "Were you planning to tell me?" I asked. She sighed. "I didn't think it mattered. You've always had your own world. I thought, maybe this is something I should handle on my own." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there in silence, realizing just how far I had drifted. Even my home, the place I thought was the anchor, was something she could imagine leaving without me. The weeks that followed were a test. I showed up every day, but the atmosphere was fragile. One moment I felt like I was making progress. Jacob would linger a little longer at the table. Emma would share a small story about her work, and the next moment I'd feel the wall between us all over again. I'd stepped off the career ladder I'd spent decades climbing. I was standing in the middle of the life I thought I'd built, and I wasn't sure if I still belonged, but I kept showing up. Because this time, I wasn't working for a promotion. I was working for my family, and I wasn't going to quit. It's surprising how long it takes for people to believe you're really there. The first few weeks after my resignation, everything felt stiff. Conversation at the dinner table was polite but guarded. Emma still glanced at her phone more than at me. Jacob answered my questions with one-word replies. Linda seemed busy in a way that made me wonder if she was deliberately avoiding long conversations. But I kept showing up. I was there in the morning, making coffee, asking if anyone wanted breakfast. I went to Jacob's soccer practices, not just the games, and sat in the bleachers even when he didn't look at me. I texted Emma articles about her field, small things to show I was paying attention. It felt awkward, forced even. But I told myself that consistency mattered more than comfort. A month in, there was a shift. It happened on a Saturday morning. I was in the garage organizing old boxes when Jacob appeared in the doorway, hands in his hoodie pocket. "Hey, Dad," he said, almost casually. I looked up, startled. "Hey, bud, what's up?" He hesitated for a second. "You doing anything tomorrow?" I shook my head. "Not really. Why?" He shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant. "Thinking about going fishing. You want to come?" It was such a simple invitation, but it hit me harder than any deal I'd ever closed. "I'd love to," I said, trying not to sound too eager. The next morning, we drove out to the lake. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation. There were no tearful speeches. We sat in a small boat, the quiet stretching between us. But he started talking, little by little, about school, about his friends, about a girl he liked but hadn't told anyone about yet. I listened, really listened. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about my phone, or the next meeting, or anything else. It was just me and my son, sharing a quiet day on the water. When we got home, Linda gave me a look I couldn't quite read, but that evening, she asked if I wanted to help her cook dinner. It was small, but it felt like another door opening. Over the next few weeks, things began to change. Dinner conversations became a little more natural. Emma started joining in, sharing stories about her work without me asking. Jacob started hanging around the living room instead of disappearing to his room after meals. I began to feel present. Then came the moment I hadn't expected. One Friday evening, Linda came into the living room with her laptop. "So," she said, sitting next to me, "I was thinking, we haven't had a family trip in a while." I looked at her, surprised. "I know," she continued quickly. "Last time wasn't ideal, but maybe it's time we try again." I felt my chest tighten. The idea of a family trip, me included, felt like a step towards something I'd thought was lost. Over the next month, we planned it together. Jacob researched activities. Emma picked restaurants. Linda handled the logistics. And for the first time in years, my name was part of the plan. It felt like progress, like maybe we were finding our way back. But a few days before the trip, while searching for sunscreen in the hallway closet, I found an old envelope tucked in the back. Inside was a set of travel documents, cruise tickets. The date was 2 years ago. The passenger list read, Linda plus 3 guests. My name wasn't there. It was the cruise. That cruise. The one they'd taken without me. I stood there for a long time, staring at the paper, my chest heavy. Part of me wanted to confront Linda immediately, to demand an explanation. But another part of me already knew. This wasn't an oversight. It hadn't been about scheduling. It had been deliberate. They'd left me behind on purpose. That night at dinner, I didn't say anything. I smiled, I laughed, I talked about the upcoming trip. But the tickets burned in the back of my mind. I realized that even as things were healing, the scars were still there, on both sides. Linda seemed lighter these days, but I could see the caution in her eyes. The kids talked to me more, but there was still a careful distance, as if they were waiting to see if this version of me was permanent. And maybe that was fair. Trust wasn't something you rebuilt overnight. I'd spent decades proving that work came first. Now I had to prove day after day that they came first, even if it meant swallowing the hurt. The night before our new family trip, I stood on the porch, looking out at the bay. The house was quiet behind me. I thought about the tickets, about what they meant, and I made a decision. I wouldn't bring it up. Not yet. Because this trip wasn't about the past. It was about building something new, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than reopening old wounds. The family trip wasn't extravagant, just a quiet week at a cabin by the coast. But it was ours. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking into something as part of the family, not as an outsider trying to wedge my way in. The first few days were simple. Morning walks with Linda along the shore, afternoons playing board games with Jacob, late-night conversations with Emma about her plans. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkward silence, reminders of how much time we'd lost. But there was laughter too. One evening, as the sun set, Linda and I sat on the porch watching the waves. She was quiet, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You've changed," she said softly. I looked at her, surprised. "I'm trying." She turned to me. "No, not just trying. You have changed. But it took a lot to get here." I knew what she meant. I thought about the cruise, about the tickets I'd found, about the birthday that had passed in silence. "Linda," I said carefully, "that trip 2 years ago, the one without me, was it just to get away?" She didn't answer right away. Finally, she sighed. "No, it wasn't about escaping you. It was about waking you up." I stared at her. "We'd tried talking to you," she continued. "The missed anniversaries, the broken promises, they weren't accidents, Mark. They were a pattern. And every time we told you how it felt, you promised it would change, but it never did. That cruise was the only way I knew to make you see it." Her voice broke slightly. "I hated doing it. But I thought maybe if you came home to an empty house on your 60th birthday, you'd finally understand what it feels like to be left out of your own family." I sat there, the sound of the waves filling the space between us. "I did," I said finally. "I understood more than I wanted to." She reached over, placing her hand on mine. "We didn't do it because we stopped loving you. We did it because we wanted you back." That night, lying in bed, I thought about her words. I realized that the cruise hadn't been an act of cruelty. It had been an act of desperation. A last attempt to pull me out of the life I'd built for myself, a life that had no room for them. It didn't erase the hurt, but it reframed it. The rest of the week felt different. There was still healing to be done, but the air felt lighter. Jacob started teasing me more. Emma started sharing stories without hesitation. And Linda looked at me in a way I hadn't seen in years. On our last night, we built a fire on the beach. The kids roasted marshmallows while Linda and I sat close, the sound of their laughter mingling with the crackle of the flames. "This is what I was working for," I said quietly. "Not the house, not the cars, just this." Linda smiled faintly. "Then keep working for it. Every day, not in the office. Here." When we got home, things didn't magically transform into a perfect family life. But there was a steadiness now, a rhythm I hadn't felt before. I didn't go back to the office. I filled my time with small things, helping Jacob with college applications, having coffee with Emma before work, taking Linda out on weekday lunches, and I learned something important. Legacy isn't about titles or salaries. It's about what you leave in the hearts of the people you love. A few months later, Emma announced her engagement. One evening, as we were going over wedding plans, she pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "I used to think I didn't want my marriage to be anything like yours and Mom's." I raised an eyebrow. "That bad, huh?" She smiled. "That before you changed. Now, I want my marriage to be like yours is now, where love means showing up. Every day." Her words caught me off guard, a quiet confirmation that the work I'd been doing mattered. The wedding came and went, full of joy and family and the kind of memories I'd missed for too long. As I stood to give a toast at the reception, I looked at Emma and her new husband, then at Jacob, then at Linda. "I used to think success was about how far you could climb," I said. "But the truth is, the higher you go, the more you need to make sure you're not leaving the people who matter most behind. Because at the end of the climb, if they're not there with you, the view isn't worth it." Linda reached for my hand as the room applauded. "I'll never get back the years I lost. I can't rewrite the birthdays I missed or the games I didn't attend. But I can write the years I have left. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: it's never too late to come home."